that directly speaks to this comment, right? So, story about it is probably, gosh, it's been more than a decade ago, right? I worked at a university, and I had several student staff members and I managed the front office for our student services housing department, right? Housing services. And I had hired a student. I was always hiring students who I could keep for the entirety of their college career, right? So I always hired freshmen, and they stayed until they graduated. Great job, right? So essentially, I hired a sophomore, young black girl, beautiful girl. I loved her. I still do. We're still good friends. And so one day I hear her on the phone, and she just sounded so frustrated. And she hangs up the phone, and I said, is there something wrong? And she goes, no. And I said, well, you sound frustrated. Are you frustrated? Because we would get repetitive conversations. Parents would call, ask the same question over and over again. Parent would call, ask the same question over and over again, right? And I said, it's like telephone roulette. You have no idea what the other person on the other end of the phone is going to say to you, but you cannot be upset about it every single time they ask, right? Because it is the first time that they've asked, even though it's the millionth time that you've heard it. And she says, nope, I'm fine. And I said, well, maybe you need to take the black girl out your voice. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, you sound angry. And I know for a fact she wasn't. She knew for a fact she wasn't. But the way it came across over the phone and in spaces with white people, she felt like, or they may have felt like, she was frustrated, she was angry, she was annoyed, she was whatever. And I knew she wasn't. And I said, you just got to take the black girl out your voice. I said, be as even as you can, be as level as you can. And I had used my speech and acting training to help teach her and coach her through how to sound on the other end of that phone when she spoke to parents, when she spoke to staff, when she spoke to administrators, when she spoke to students, international students from everywhere, right? Because we were familiar with the process, but this was their first time asking that question, even though it was the millionth time we've heard it. And I will tell you, those customer service days and those customer service experiences that I had have helped myself, I'm sure my student staff, who are now no longer students, right? Who are adults who utilize those same skills, rinse and repeat. I use those same skills, rinse and repeat, every single day. I can disarm an executive in a second. I can explain things to a baby because I spent my early 20s and my early 20s in college, as well as my late 20s working there professionally in that office, teaching myself and working with the public. It has served me every single day to watch how I speak in spaces and how I am clear about how I speak in spaces and how I articulate information and how I distribute information and how I try to make it as clear and as clean as possible, because clear communication will always, and no matter what space you're in, help you win. I hope that helps.